Hey guys, welcome back to the One Step Better podcast. I'm Mike, and this is Matt. How's it going, man?
Hey man, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well, doing real well.
Nice, lovely day outside in Memphis.
It is. We finally got some good weather coming in. It's starting to turn a little bit fallish.
It's not 100 yet.
That's right. That's right. So today we're going to kick off a new series. Over the next few weeks, we're going to talk about all things people. People is one of the biggest drivers of any business, and so we're going to talk about when to hire, when to fire, how you can motivate them, all the things. So make sure that you subscribe and don't miss an episode over the next few weeks. But today we're going to talk about when to hire folks. But before we do that, Matt, got a question for you. If something at your house was to break, how do you respond to that?
I am probably one of the laziest people alive, number one. I've been married long enough to know that I have to stay in my lane.
I like the confidence to be willing to admit that you're lazy.
You know what? I'm very self-confident that I'm lazy. I'm only responsible for 5 things in my house. I have to change light bulbs as long as they bring me the chair.
Do you have to go buy the light bulb to change it?
No.
Okay.
The light better, if it's not there, it's not going to get there.
You just like get up on the chair and screw it
If you bring me the chair and the light bulb, I will change the light bulbs. I write checks, which means something breaks. I'm the one responsible generally for writing the check. I'm not the person who calls the person to make sure they show up to fix it, but I have the right of the check. I am the IT guy at our house, which I'm trying to get rid of that duty as fast as I possibly can. What are the other 5 things? I'm not even sure I even have 5 anymore.
Let's just call it 3.
Maybe 3 things. But yeah, no, I mean, honestly, if there's something I can...
Probably kill bugs.
I kill all spiders. That's definitely one.
Yeah.
That's definitely one because Mandy is like afraid like they're going to eat her or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. They're like this big. I don't get it. Yeah, I pretty much try to steer clear. I mean, I'll fix little tiny things just because, like, let's say the cabinet's loose or something like that. I'll screw that in. Or if the disposal gets clogged, I can fix that usually. But that's about the extent of my abilities.
So light maintenance.
Very extremely way light maintenance.
Not even sure you'd call it maintenance?
No.
Yeah.
Like if I have to go pick up salt for the pool, I'll do that. Now I will have a kid get it out of my car and put it where it needs to go.
So you drive the car. You're like the truck driver.
I'll make sure at the store I'm buying to, they can bring it, put it on the cart for me. I can roll it to my car. I'll put it from the cart into my car. And that's about the extent of me doing it.
Oh, that's impressive.
Salt.
Yeah.
I know. Very lazy, Mike.
The pool store I go to, they load your salt for you. So.
No, I don't go to the pool store. I just go to Home Depot.
Oh, you're overpaying for pool salt.
Yeah. Like I said.
I write the check.
I write the check. Whatever, man.
This is the One Step Better podcast. Helping small businesses make wins each and every week. It's funny, I used to be very control freakish over if something was to break, I wanted to be involved in the fix or the responsibility of trying to figure out the solution for it. The older I've gotten, the less that's a thing. And so now it's more, hey, Meredith, can you call a handful of people, see what they, and it's normally Meredith is saying, hey, Mike, this is what I did, more than
That's
me
exactly
saying,
how
hey,
it should be, Mike. Yeah. Yes.
And so
the dishwasher's broke.
I don't get
and
involved
now
in those things anymore.
Fixed. That's the I've done a couple things historically. Right away when we moved to our first house in Little Rock, we had a burner that got short, and one of the burners in our stove. So I tried to fix that one, and then it broke, and then I had to change the next one, and then that one when I was fixing it broke the next one. So I ended up paying for 4 burners, which would have been probably about a third of what a whole new stove would have cost me.
Yeah.
But I did fix it.
Yeah.
I've done that. I've replaced a garbage disposal. I've installed a dishwasher. I've installed a microwave.
Have you done any of those things in the past 5 years?
Microwave. That's probably the
Okay.
last
You
one.
put a microwave on the counter?
No, it's a built-in. I had to take it out, and we had to recut anyway, yeah.
One of the times that you're going to hire an employee is when something's broken. Whether it's fixing a microwave at home because something's broken, whether you got a new product line that you want to launch and you need somebody because you don't have the skill set to do it or whatever it may be, you're going to have to bring somebody in when something is broken sometimes to get something fixed. Not the only time that you'd hire an employee, but it's one of the big times. Other reasons why you might need to bring on somebody is just from growth. Maybe somebody has quit, you need to replace them. There's a variety of reasons. And so today we're going to talk about, when is the right time to hire? And I want to come at this from a couple of different angles.
Okay.
One is let's say I'm a small business and I am expanding into different areas, maybe different product lines, whatever it may be, and I need some help with those things. And another is going to be one of my people just walked out the door, whether it's a rock star employee or maybe just a solid B performer.
Critical role that we have to have done by
Because
someone.
I think there's a couple of, there's probably maybe a couple of different approaches that I would take based on the situation that's going to come in. So let's start with, I am a small business I'm thinking about launching something different, or I'm going to go into this new territory, or I just need a little bit more expertise on my team because of whatever reason. When do you start to think about bringing somebody on that would be responsible for that new thing?
This is something that comes up, I think, a lot. It could be a new role, but it also could be a whole new thing. We've done this a couple times over the years, and it kind of is when you're feeling like how we're doing it today is not as good as I want it to be done, or I know nothing about that type of, like our first salesperson, for instance, or when we went into HR services, to think of that from our own state. I have an idea of what I want to do, but I don't know how to execute that and what all I need to be thinking about that I don't know of. I often look first if I'm going to, is there an outsource provider I should be looking to? Should I be outsourcing this thing to somebody else?
And that's your idea. I'm just going to try to step into that a little bit easier.
It's a put your toe in the water, figuring out what you want. Also, you're not sure it's a full-time thing, or if it is a full-time thing, it's more of a test ground. But also just the expertise of an outsource provider a lot of times has, they usually have a very broad brush that they can apply their outsource, if it's outside marketing or outside sales, or it could be an IT firm or whatever it is. And you're looking at that as going, I think that we need help in this area. I don't know what an employee in this role would look like. Once you determine, though, that is something that this is the service I'm going to provide, or I need to have this role in-house so it's at the volume I want it to be, or do they execute the way we want to, I really start thinking through what's the results I want to envision, but I then work myself back to, okay, what type of people or what type of hire am I trying to make? And it's very hard for me. I am quick to be super optimistic. Everything's going to work out perfectly. This person's going to have all the skill sets in the world I need. I really don't have a very clear definition yet of what I'm looking for. And so it is a very hard thing for me to step into a lot of times when it is that. I have to kind of pull my own reins there, or I'll get way ahead of myself.
I think you hit something there. Your personality type, we talk about Colby internally. If you don't know what that is, go look it up. It's, kind of how you do work. And in your Colby, you are a high quick start, meaning that you like to jump in and then you'll figure it out.
Correct.
And so that's indicative in some of your hiring stuff or jumping into.
For sure.
Hey, I want to let's get somebody with me and I'm going to go figure this out and we'll go do it together. And I don't really know what that role looks like yet, or I don't know really what winning looks like, or I don't know what success looks like, but we're going to go figure that out.
I know the
together.
result I want to have.
Yeah.
I don't know the pieces of figuring that out on the front end. I have to kind of get my hands dirty a little bit.
Yeah.
And I can't do that conceptually. I have to do it in kind of real time.
Yeah. That's interesting.
You're the opposite of that.
I'm not, well,
not opposite, but
I'm higher fact find. So I like the more information. So I'm going to approach that with, I'm going to try to figure out all the things I don't know. I'm going to try to figure them all out to some level, not a perfect level, but I want to at least have a concept of what I'm dealing with. That way I can give some guidance, direction, and know exactly what kind of personality that I need for that role. And so where that hits for me is I need to know what level of person I need in that role. Let's say if we're starting a new product line, I need somebody to oversee that, or if it's a brand new role that we just have identified that we need, I want to be able to know what kind of person, what level of person I need that. Do I need somebody that's going to come in and has some experience and some maybe director level that could figure some of that stuff out and we're going to give them the reins to that? Or is this something that we feel like we can do with maybe an entry level or a little less experienced person because we have the strategy piece figured out? We just need some execution there. And so that, for me, that's part of the fact-finding mission, and that helps me then start to tailor my hiring to the type of role I'm looking for.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, we've done a little bit of both of that. I mean, you look at, I think Robbie, for example, he came from a background. He's our director of benefit services, and that was what he came from. We knew what the role had to be. He had experience doing what we wanted to do. He was definitely the right culture fit, and it was a lot clearer. The hard part is if we didn't have a Robbie, identifying that's the type of person we would want to found. He kind of, we'd already knew him.
Yeah.
And so, like, I'll use, when we hired Anna as example, we had an idea what we want a videographer to do, or a person on our marketing team to do, but we weren't sure about what's that look like from an execution standpoint. What's the skill set we need to see? How do I vet that person is the right person that we need on the team at the right time? And it's a kind of a little bit of, you're like, I have a tendency to have a little bit just like my intuition, but I don't have anything that's proven, and it is very, very difficult.
It is. So like using Robbie as an example, who's our director of benefit services, oversees all of our insurance stuff, and then Anna is our videographer, one of the key primary people on our marketing team. Both of those people came into a role that did not exist.
Correct.
We identified that there was a need for that. So at what point did it make sense to pull the trigger to actually hire a person in that role? What was the decision-making process that went into that?
We knew we wanted to do the benefit services right, and we also knew that the bandwidth of the people on our team, you could have done that job, but you couldn't do that job in 9 other jobs.
Right.
Same thing with Anna is we probably could have outsourced video other ways, but it wouldn't have been executed the way we wanted to be on our own, with our own brand and ingrainedly knowing our story and ingrainedly knowing what we're trying to do from a content standpoint, so that I don't think we would have executed it nearly as well. We find that all the time, outsource your IT versus bringing it in-house. We've had that conversation 1,000 times. It's the same logic of it could be done okay, but not as good as I would want it to be done.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of my big, I want to do this really well.
It was control. A lot of it was control.
Yeah.
We knew kind of what we wanted that to look like, and we knew that we had a better chance of achieving those goals if that person was in-house versus outside.
I think about some of my first hires, for me, when I was like, what was the help I needed right then was different than thinking through a role I was trying to fill. I was thinking a lot more on task driven. Now I feel like it's role and what we're trying to achieve, and so like certain roles have always I had in my mind when I first started they were helper roles. They were helping me execute, and we don't do that anymore. I mean, that's just not things we help the team execute, which is a lot different mindset for me.
Yeah, there's a shift there. I think if you're an early stage company or a smaller company, your first hires are going to be either revenue producing roles or supporting the revenue that is being produced.
Yeah, removing hats of the people you have on your team. That's what I always think of as I started with employee 1, so I had every hat that could possibly be, and eventually I wanted to get rid of some of those hats that made sense. In the very beginning it was supporting revenue, clearly, or it was, helping us with, I'll say the finish line execution. So we had a lot of administrative support because it was, okay, I had to deliver and call clients and make sure the stuff's coming in appropriately timed. I don't want to be the person to be having to chase all that stuff down. It wasn't as efficient as it could be. Yeah. And then we started hiring our actual accountant roles. It was, I can't physically do all the work. There's just not enough time in the day. And so that was kind of the evolution of that. And then we got into specialties. So once we got into the payroll business, that was needed somebody that, truly can own payroll, the actual execution of just doing payroll every day. And, Tammy was one of our first hires.
Got questions about how to run your business better? Join Works and Patrick Accounting for office hours. Every month on Thursdays, several of our staff host open discussion Zoom meetings to share tips on business best practices, as well as answer any questions you have about their topic. We talk about QuickBooks tips and tricks, how to understand your insurance policies, employee onboarding, and the list goes on and on and on. Don't miss your opportunity to engage in the conversation and come away with some business tips. Register today at works.com/office hours. That's WHIRKS.com/office hours. Can't wait to see you there.
Let's say maybe a little bit easier. I have an existing role figured out, but maybe I'm expanding that team. So I'm adding another person into an existing role, or I had, maybe a key employee or half that team or whoever it may be walks out. How do you start to identify when do I hire somebody in anticipation of, trauma type event versus waiting for it to happen? That's always a bit of a spectrum that's kind of difficult to balance.
They're two-sided coin right there, right? So the first side of that is anticipating a hire, right? That's the logic of growth or whatever. The second one you said, which was these people have walked out the door. I know the role I need filled. I got to go find it. It's super easy when that happens to hire too quickly.
Mm-hmm.
You're desperate. You know that, oh crap, I have all this work to get done, or this thing has to get done, and I don't have anybody now currently on my team to do the work. That is a recipe for disaster. It is one of those things where inevitably, if you're not patient enough, you're going to hire someone who's not an ideal fit, and you have to be willing to suck it up, get all hands on deck that are available to get through that time, to still have the same patient routine system to hire the right person for your team, regardless of how bad it is. You may put a bidding on it with something that could be an outsourced option. It could be, hey, I need a temporary person. There's plenty of opportunities to do that, but that person's not a permanent fit until you've gone through the appropriate processes. I think we've made that mistake 1,000 times. Mm-hmm. I think of this first, we had a manager leave in mid-tax season, early on, and it was like, we have a lot of tax returns to get done and not a lot of time to do them. This is the same as the analogy we used a couple of weeks ago, which was I have a line cook that is not here today and I need a line cook. It's the same problem, right? And so you basically have to figure out how you get redundancies in place on the front end so that if something like that does happen, you're not just demolished. It's really hard when you're small. Like I remember when we were first opening up, we had 6 employees and 2 people were out sick that day. I'm like, a third of my workforce is out of work today. It's not great. Or we have 2 people on vacation the same week. Like, this is a disaster. We just lost a third of our production ability. And now we have enough size to have redundancies in place and overlaps so that it's not as crushing.
Yeah.
The other side of that one, which was I'm wanting to grow, you have to really be anticipating your hiring needs at all time. We constantly are forecasting out both our revenue model, the number of clients we're serving, development of our people, where they're going to be growing into new roles. And so you have to be thinking how you're going to backfill them or create some cushion for inefficiencies as we have more people in a new role than they normally are. And so that forward looking, being able to predict revenue is super important. Being able to predict growth and understanding volume of all the different roles you have, you have to be thinking. I try to think 6 months to a year in advance, sometimes 2 years in advance, depending on what we're trying to get to. And our revenue is fairly predictable. So with revenue that is predictable, it makes it a lot easier to understand what capacities need to be and how much work we have. We also look for abilities to have control over our capacity with other alternatives, be it outsourcing or be it flexible employees that can do multiple tasks. Think of it like a utility infielder, right? You don't have to have a great second baseman if you have a good utility player and another good utility player. You can mix and match. It's just like that idea. You have to have enough redundancies in place to make it easier.
As you're talking about all that, the first thing that comes to mind is e-myth.
Yeah.
It's a lot of times we get on the hamster wheel and we're running, and it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture of, I'm responsible for running this entire business, not just this one function of my job, because all those things takes time. It takes energy. It takes commitment, discipline to sit down and push everything else aside and think through, where am I going to be in 3 years? Where am I going to be in 2 years, to plan that stuff? It's not easy to do.
I always love the analogy in E-Myth, which is like, hey, I'm the doer, then I'm the manager, then I'm the owner, but then I really slide back into manager, then I sometimes slide back into the doer, then I get back up to the manager role. I always knew when I started my business that me having to jump in and do something was always on the table and always something I would have to be willing to do. We run into a lot of clients that don't always think that way. And they're like, oh my gosh, we can't possibly just pick up the shovel or pick up, go get behind the line. That's your job. That's you're the owner. That's how this works. Yeah. And I think that has to be, it's a mind. You have to put that in your mind and make sure it's 100% true that I'm willing to do anything I have to do to jump in and help, because there could be the day when, hey, we have a massive event and, something happens and we lose a couple of our people, or somebody quits and it runs off 5 other people. You never know what could happen. You have to be able to step up and figure out what's going to have to get it fixed.
You do have to have that mentality. At the same time, you have to, I think, counter that with the mentality of, I'm going to try my best to never have to jump in to those things, because I'm going to do my job as owner so well that I have all these contingencies in place. I've thought through what happens if, I'm now ready. I've planned for that. Now a matter of executing that game plan. But
Correct. It's
come
both.
hell or high water, if I have to jump on that stinking griddle, I got to jump on that griddle and make some pancakes.
And that's the mentality. The hedge of that has to be, I'm putting all the redundancies I can in place to make sure that stuff, that if it does happen, we're going to be fine. And I don't necessarily have to jump in. There's a lot of accounting firm owners I know that this is their mentality. They have to jump back to production. They have to jump no, you're jumping back to production because you didn't set yourself up for success down the road.
Yeah.
It's hard though.
It is difficult. Jumping back in should not be your first step.
A lot of times it's dictated by budget. You have the ability to pay for extra redundancy. You have extra capacity. You have the budget to not be as profitable because you have that extra capacity in place. And a lot of small businesses just don't have that.
Yeah.
And that can be any business you're in. And so it is one of those things you kind of have to live within your means with that goal of growth.
So just kind of recapping a little bit on when to hire. Realistically, it sounds like it may be, you need to hire that person as soon as you have the budget, training, the idea of what that role looks like, and get that person up to speed. You always need to be thinking through what happens if. That way, whether it's you're developing a bench of people on your team today that could jump into those roles from a developmental standpoint with some maybe a little bit more advanced training, or it's maybe I'm identifying some people that are outside of the building that if something happened, these are my short list of people that I need to call on.
Yeah, keeping the people in reserve is an awesome idea. But I mean, every business coach would tell you, anybody, always be recruiting is a thing. Always be looking for your next best person. The Coach K analogy of he has 12 of McDonald's All-Americans. He still has an opportunity to sign LeBron. He's going to figure out a spot for them. If you have that mentality always that you're always recruiting for the best people, you're going to have the capacity you need.
Yeah. Very good. Matt, thanks for joining us. Thanks for listening, everybody. I appreciate you tuning in. Make sure you click subscribe. That way you don't ever miss an episode. And we'll catch you next week on another episode of the One Step Better podcast. Thanks for listening to the One Step Better podcast. I'd really appreciate it if you would take some time to rate us 5 stars on your podcast player of choice, and make sure that you subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you never miss out on another episode. Thanks and have a great day.